This story begins as severe polar cold pushes southward, targeting Montana with unusual winter intensity. In early 2026, disrupted polar circulation allowed Arctic air to surge unusually deep into the region. Montana's open terrain leaves communities highly exposed to advancing waves of extreme cold. Temperatures dropped toward -24 degrees, rapidly overwhelming people, vehicles, and exposed infrastructure. Urban centers strained as heating demand spiked and outdoor movement became increasingly dangerous. The landscape itself hardened, showing how deeply the cold penetrated natural systems. Daily routines changed as residents adjusted behavior to survive life-threatening cold exposure. Data confirmed the cold wave was widespread, persistent, and unusually intense for the region. Scientists link such cold extremes to broader instability within a warming climate system. What unfolded here signals deeper changes shaping how winter behaves across North America. Before recent extremes, Montana winters followed familiar patterns that communities understood and prepared for. Cold was expected, but rarely reached levels that threatened safety, livelihoods, or infrastructure stability. Cities functioned reliably through winter, supported by systems designed for historically typical cold ranges. Homes and heating systems were built to handle cold, but not prolonged polar extremes. Ecosystems evolved around steady winters that changed gradually rather than arriving abruptly. Generations adapted to cold, treating winter as a challenge but not a crisis. Emergency planning focused on storms, not extended waves of extreme sub-zero temperatures. Historical data suggested stability rather than sudden escalation in winter severity. Cold shaped daily life, but rarely inspired fear or emergency-level concern. That sense of normal winter would soon be disrupted by an unprecedented climatic shift. Subtle atmospheric signals appeared as polar circulation weakened and allowed cold air to escape southward. Scientists observed the jet stream dipping unusually far south, opening a pathway for Arctic cold. Forecast models began showing prolonged cold potential beyond anything recently recorded for Montana. Residents noticed nights turning sharply colder, signaling an approaching extreme cold event. Sudden temperature drops stressed vegetation, revealing how abruptly the cold intensified. Wildlife adjusted behavior early, conserving energy as survival thresholds were crossed. Utilities prepared for strain as extreme cold threatened system reliability. Transport agencies anticipated mechanical failures caused by contraction and brittle materials. Official warnings urged residents to prepare for dangerously low temperatures approaching rapidly. A brief stillness marked the final calm before extreme cold swept across Montana. Temperatures collapsed overnight as polar air surged southward, overwhelming Montana with extreme cold. Within hours, exposed surfaces froze solid, showing how rapidly the cold wave intensified. Strong winds pushed wind chills far lower, making outdoor exposure immediately life-threatening. Electrical systems strained as heating demand surged under extreme sub-zero conditions. Emergency crews prepared for rising cases of hypothermia and mechanical breakdowns. Authorities urged reduced travel as roads and vehicles became unreliable in extreme cold. Homes consumed record energy as systems struggled to maintain safe indoor temperatures. Rivers froze faster than normal, reflecting the intensity of the sudden temperature collapse. Businesses reduced activity as extreme cold disrupted labor and logistics by morning. It was clear this cold wave exceeded recent winter experiences. Residents faced immediate danger as exposed skin risked frostbite within minutes of outdoor exposure. Local authorities expanded warming centers to protect vulnerable populations from life-threatening cold. Older residents faced elevated risk as prolonged cold strained health and mobility. Outdoor labor halted as extreme cold made work conditions unsafe and unmanageable. Schools closed to reduce student exposure during the most dangerous cold period. Hospitals treated increased cold-related injuries alongside routine winter medical cases. Even insulated homes struggled as prolonged cold drained heating capacity. Rural residents faced isolation with limited access to immediate emergency assistance.
Scientists examined the cold wave, identifying links to Arctic warming and destabilized polar circulation patterns. Rapid Arctic warming weakens temperature contrasts that once kept polar air contained farther north. A weakened polar vortex allowed dense cold air to escape southward in concentrated surges. Records show winters becoming more volatile, swinging between warmth and extreme cold more often. Changes thousands of miles away increasingly influence local winter conditions in the American West. Field measurements confirmed unusually fast ice growth consistent with extreme cold intrusion. A slower jet stream prolonged cold exposure, trapping frigid air over Montana longer. Attribution research increasingly connects severe cold outbreaks to broader climate system disruption. Experts clarified that climate change amplifies extremes, not just gradual warming trends. Evidence suggests this cold event reflects a growing pattern of unstable winter behavior. Everyday routines changed as residents minimized exposure to dangerously low outdoor temperatures. Shorter wait times became critical as prolonged exposure risked rapid frostbite. Employers adjusted operations to protect workers from extended cold exposure. Extreme cold strained supply chains, affecting food access and delivery reliability. Households monitored heating closely as prolonged cold increased energy consumption sharply. Families limited children's outdoor exposure to only essential moments. Recreational spaces closed as extreme cold removed safe outdoor options. Community spaces became essential refuges during prolonged sub-zero conditions. Maintaining social connection helped reduce isolation during extended indoor confinement. Life continued, carefully adapting to conditions, testing endurance and preparedness. Many residents described the cold as relentless, testing emotional resilience and long-term coping capacity. Small businesses absorbed heavy losses as extreme cold reduced customers and increased operating expenses. Rural families concentrated daily life into heated spaces to survive extended sub-zero conditions. Public warnings emphasized how quickly frostbite occurs in -24-degree temperatures. Essential workers described operating in short bursts to avoid dangerous cold exposure. Medical teams reported increased cold-related cases alongside normal winter illnesses. Isolation deepened as prolonged cold limited movement and face-to-face interaction. Mutual support became critical to identifying risks before emergencies escalated. Economic activities slowed as extreme cold dominated daily decisions and operations. Shared stories revealed how deeply the cold reshaped everyday life across Montana. Emergency planners identified groups at risk as extreme cold persisted longer than expected. People without stable housing faced immediate danger, making shelter access a life-saving priority. Older residents required frequent monitoring as cold intensified health risks and limited mobility. Chronic illness patients faced higher danger as cold exposure and power dependence increased. Remote communities experienced delayed assistance due to distance and hazardous travel conditions.
Reliable electricity became essential for survival as heating needs peaked during extreme cold. Families reduced exposure by planning food, water, and heating use carefully. Continuous messaging reinforced how quickly conditions could become life-threatening. Impacts were uneven, reflecting deeper social and economic vulnerabilities. Risk remained high, underscoring how fragile safety becomes during extreme climate events. Experts warned similar cold waves may become more frequent as atmospheric stability continues weakening. Simulations show slower jet streams can trap extreme cold over regions for extended periods. Long-term records indicate winters are becoming less predictable and more severe. Utilities evaluate upgrades to prevent outages during sustained extreme cold events. Cities reconsider design standards to better protect residents during future cold emergencies. Rural planning prioritizes faster response to reduce isolation during winter crises. Economic planning increasingly includes resilience against climate-driven winter extremes. Community education emerges as a key defense against future extreme cold events. The future demands adaptation as extreme winter conditions grow increasingly possible.
State agencies reviewed response outcomes to identify weaknesses exposed by the prolonged cold crisis. Lawmakers debated investments needed to protect communities from future extreme winter conditions. Reviews focused on strengthening systems vulnerable to sustained sub-zero temperatures. Energy resilience emerged as central concern during extended periods of extreme cold. Transportation strategies expanded to account for safety under persistent severe cold. Housing standards are being reconsidered to reduce indoor cold exposure risks. Clear messaging proved critical in helping residents respond appropriately to dangerous cold. Coordinated planning aims to shorten response times during future climate-driven cold emergencies. Documented lessons ensure this event informs future preparedness decisions statewide. This cold wave marked a turning point in how winter risk is governed in Montana. Attention shifted toward adaptation strategies designed to reduce harm from future extreme cold events. Improving building efficiency became essential to maintain warmth during prolonged sub-zero exposure. Diversifying energy sources helped stabilize supply when traditional systems face cold stress. Preparedness training empowers communities to respond quickly during dangerous winter conditions. Transportation systems are winterized to remain functional during severe temperature drops. Healthcare systems refined plans to manage spikes in hypothermia and frostbite cases. Rural areas emphasize self-sufficiency to offset delayed external assistance during extreme cold. Education campaigns stress prevention as the first line of defense against extreme cold. Collaboration strengthens readiness across sectors facing increasing winter volatility. Adaptation efforts mark a shift toward living with changing winter realities. Local communities stepped forward, leading preparedness efforts tailored to Montana's unique winter risks. Volunteer networks expanded rapidly, filling critical gaps where formal systems struggled to reach. Schools played a role in teaching younger generations how to recognize and manage cold risks. Faith organizations became trusted shelters, offering stability during prolonged sub-zero conditions. Informal monitoring ring reduced isolation and identified problems before they escalated into emergencies. Some businesses adapted roles, offering safe indoor refuge during peak cold periods. Shared hardship reinforced resilience, rooted in regional identity and cooperation. Digital communication strengthened coordination during prolonged indoor confinement across communities. Targeted outreach addressed unequal exposure to extreme cold across Montana neighborhoods. Community-driven responses proved vital in reducing harm during unprecedented winter extremes. Projections suggest future winters may bring sharper swings between mild periods and extreme cold events. Climate simulations indicate polar outbreaks could recur more often as Arctic warming continues. Without upgrades, Infrastructure faces higher failure risks during extended periods of sub-zero cold. Cities concentrate our vulnerability where population density meets aging winter infrastructure systems. Rural regions remain exposed to delayed response times during future extreme cold emergencies. Repeated cold extremes threaten economic stability by interrupting production, transport, and labor access. Health models warn frequent cold exposure could strain medical systems more severely. Experts stress urgent action before extreme cold events become more common. The warning is clear, as winter extremes loom larger in a changing climate. Natural systems respond slowly, extending the impact of extreme cold beyond the weather event. Data collected will guide understanding of future winter behavior in a changing climate. Lessons learned now shape strategies to reduce harm from future extreme cold events. Life returns gradually, strengthened by cooperation and shared experience. This cold wave fits a wider pattern of climate-driven winter instability. The cold retreats, but underlying risks remain embedded within the climate system. What happened here stands as a warning, demanding preparation before the next extreme winter arrives.